Well, good evening. Thank you for joining our presentation tonight on the boundary process, the attendance boundary process in the Anoka-Hennepin School District. This evening, we're going to provide an update on our current proposals, specifically within the Blaine cluster. As we consider the attendance boundary process, we are currently looking at boundary adjustments at the elementary level, as well as at the middle school level in several areas of our district. As we are considering these potential adjustments, we are looking at them in relation to accelerated growth in several areas of our district, specifically in Dayton and in Blaine. We are also looking at balancing the middle school enrollment in the Blaine cluster, factoring in additionally the repurposing of Franklin Elementary for special education programming. And we also want to note that there are no recommended changes for high school attendance areas. Currently, we have some challenges in some of our school facilities with high growth areas that are impacting impacting our ability to provide educational programming in some of our elementary schools due to the accelerated growth. Our goal for tonight is to share an update on the process used to revisit the boundary and attendance areas in all of our elementary schools and in the Blaine cluster for 2 of our middle schools. Specifically tonight, we are looking at an adjustment in the Blaine cluster only from our proposals that have been brought forward during this process, which began in September. The boundary process is in alignment with a strategic priority, and this strategic priority is in alignment to looking at the school board direction to ensure that our facilities ensure efficient operations for district facilities and programming. And our school board requires that as we go through this process, we provide public review and comment on boundary proposals prior to any board approval on any adjustment on our current boundaries and attendance areas. This timeline provides a nice glance at how we have engaged our community in the boundary process up until this date. In the month of September, we held community meetings in all of our clusters, our Champlin Park cluster, our Coon Rapids cluster, our Anoka cluster, Andover cluster, and our Blaine cluster. In the month of October, we held 3 additional community meetings in the Champlin Park cluster, Blaine cluster, and the Anoka cluster. We did not hold community meetings in the month of October for the Coon Rapids cluster or for the Anoka cluster, as we are not in the Andover cluster, as we are not proposing any changes in the boundary attendance areas at this time. This evening, we are holding this additional meeting as we have a slight adjustment on our initial proposal for the Blaine cluster, and that is in relation to Sunrise Elementary and McKinley Elementary, as well as a slight adjustment with our 2 middle schools in the Blaine cluster, Roosevelt Middle School and Northdale Middle School. On November 21st, we will go forward to the school board with our final recommendation with a board vote at that board meeting on Monday, November 21st. After the board decision, communication at the end of November, beginning part of December, will be provided to all families at the elementary level and to families at the Roosevelt, in the Roosevelt Middle School and Northdale Middle School attendance area. And again, there are no other recommendations for middle school boundary adjustments in any of our other middle schools. and no recommendations for any adjustments at our high school level. And the approved boundary adjustments will be implemented the fall of 2023. As we go through the boundary process, we have a number of parameters that we consider and factor into our recommendations and our considerations for any adjustments. One is that we look at the teacher-student ratio, that those are maintained, and that we also look at the supports and the programming in the schools, both at the elementary level and at the middle school level as we're looking at potential adjustments. We ensure that students are receiving comparable educational experiences. We follow state guidelines. We also look at ensuring we're following efficient use of our district resources. We design bus rides of reasonable lengths. We also look with a goal of having boundaries that are contiguous and adjoining. And we consider current growth and potential future growth in any of our recommendations that we're bringing forward. At the elementary level, our goal is to maintain boundaries at the elementary level for 5 years and at the secondary level for 10 years. At this time, I'd like to introduce Greg Cole, Chief Operations Officer, who will be reviewing some of our boundary adjustments.
Thank you, Dr. Wolverton, and thank you for joining us this evening. On September 26th, that was our original school board presentation with regard to our initial boundary recommendations, and we're here tonight, as Dr. Wolverton mentioned, to specifically talk about an additional adjustment we're recommending for the Blaine cluster. So what you're looking at is, on the left is the current boundary for Sunrise Elementary School, Johnsville, McKinley, and Jefferson, which are the schools impacted by our recommendations related to the increased enrollment at Sunrise Elementary School due to rapid growth in that part of our school district. On the right was our original recommendation, which essentially brings the boundary, it shrinks the boundary from Bunker Lake Boulevard down to the Ham Lake Blaine dividing line between the two cities. And then also remove some of the areas to the south of Main Street and then also to the east of Highway 65. Now, based on information that we received after our October 1 counts and then also other market factors that are present with regard to interest rate changes and so forth, we felt it was important to re-examine the Sunrise boundary area specifically to do everything that we possibly could to ensure that we could try to maintain our commitment to a 5-year boundary adjustment. So with that, we came forward at the November 7th school board meeting with an additional recommendation specifically for the Sunrise attendance area that impacts, this additional piece impacts the McKinley attendance area. So we, based on projections from the city of Blaine with regard to housing starts, we took a look at areas that are currently don't have very many students in them, but there's a projection for some enrollment changes with housing developments, and we felt that we could find an area, which you'll see marked by number 4 here, on the northern side of the Sunrise boundary area, that we could move to McKinley, which would impact very few students in the current Sunrise attendance area. And then also with future growth, we feel pretty strongly that McKinley could handle that additional enrollment, and then it would give us a little more cushion with regard to Sunrise's enrollment for sustainability long term. So this is our proposal for that. We did present this at the November 7th school board meeting, and it is part of our final recommendation that we'll be presenting at November 21st school board meeting. Next, similar dynamic occurring between the boundaries of Roosevelt Middle School and Northdale Middle School. On the left is the current boundary for those two schools. On the right is the proposal that we presented at September 26th school board meeting. The purple area is the proposed area for Northdale Middle School. the blue being the proposed area for Roosevelt Middle School. Similarly, though, we took a look at the same dynamic and wanted to keep consistent with boundaries. So you can see where in the next slide, we're recommending the same area that is currently in the Sunrise attendance area for elementary. And in this case, we're recommending that it change from Northdale to Sunrise, same consistent area that would change from Sunrise to McKinley at the elementary level. So that's area number 4. So that again that was a recommendation we brought forward at the November 7th school board meeting. And it is our intention to bring that same recommendation pending further feedback that we may receive at the November 21st school board meeting. So our next steps between now and November 21st is there's still opportunities for people to provide us with feedback. We encourage you to do so at ahschools.us/backslash-boundaries. And then our plan moving forward is to consider approval from the school board of boundary proposals at our November 21st school board meeting. And if that is approved by our school board, those boundaries would go into effect for the 23-24 school year. So with that, we take any questions or feedback. Please make sure that you reach out to us if you have feedback that you'd like to provide. And again, thank you for joining us here this evening. Good night.